This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the UK's #1 coral selling website, prestigereef.co.uk and reefdork.etsy.com for all your 3D printed aquarium accessory needs. What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Reef Dork show. There's no Ryan tonight. There's an outside chance he'll join later, but he's looking after a sick relative. So it's just me tonight, which means we'll be talking about aquacultured scullies that have landed in the UK. And I'm going to do news early on because there's a new light. And I can talk about this as much as I want without Ryan falling asleep and looking bored. So we're going to talk about the new AI, what's it called? AI Hydra Edge. So we'll talk about the new light. And then we'll also talk about, there's some other stuff I wanted to go over as well. What else was there? We've got the Reef Dork Fish of the Week and the Reef Dork Coral of the Week, which I'm really looking forward to doing because then we'll do it properly and we'll see what it's like when it's done right. So, and I'll talk to the chat because without Ryan to yabber on for hours on end, I'll be finishing it after about half an hour otherwise. So we'll have a chat too. Right then. So straight off, do you know what? I'm going to start with the news jingle. Because we're going to go straight into the news early on rather than leaving it to the end as we usually do, there's not a massive amount of news kicking around this week, with the exception of the AI Hydra Edge, which isn't a terrible name, actually. I don't mind that. So this is the new light from Aqua Illumination, and I think this looks fantastic. So it's not currently available in the UK, but it will be soon from the looks of it. A month or so, maybe. Haven't heard anything official yet, but if you look on various retail websites in the UK, it says shipping time 3 to 4 weeks. That might get pushed back. Who knows? Pricing. We'll come on to pricing. There's a few things that I really like about this, and you guys will have to tell me in the chat if you like it or not. It's different to the usual lights you get. On the face of it, it's kind of like a fat AI blade. I'm a big fan of the AI blades, but there are a number of things that they don't do. So they've got a very narrow spectrum. They've only got a few color channels, and people do use them as lighting to cover the full tank. But I think they're far better used as fill light, which is what I do on my tank. So there are some restrictions with them and some limitations. This though is a lot chunkier and a lot bigger, and it has what they've done. So actually, it's effectively what a lot of people have started doing over the last few years with lights, which is overkill, is like I have done on the cade behind me. That's only a 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter tank, 100 liters, roughly 25 gallons. And I've got a Kessel A500X and two 12-inch AI blades, which is thick end of a grand's worth of light for a tank that I run, and I run them at like 25%. I run them at really low intensity, but I do that because I want full coverage. I want physical coverage, light covering the entirety of the tank, and I want the mix of shimmer from Kessels with the fluorescence you don't get with Kessels, because Kessels don't really do that proper bright fluorescence very well. And the full coverage as well, which is what the AI blades do. So that's what a lot of people have been doing for the last few years, for a while, to be fair, been trying to recover, because T5s used to do that, and metal halides to an extent. T5s would cover the entirety of the top of the tank, basically. You'd get a T5 light pretty much the size of your tank, a 4 foot by 2 foot T5 for a 4 foot by 2 foot tank. So people have been kind of trying to go back towards that, I think, over the last few years. And AI have kind of made that happen all in one. So unlike what I've done at the moment with my lighting setup, where you need 3 plugs as much as anything and to spend an absolute fortune, what you can do instead is use one of these. There are 2 sizes, 68 and the 44. The 44 is, 90 watts, and which is roughly equivalent to a Radeon XR15. and the 68 is 135 watts, which is roughly equivalent. Well, it's not really. It's kind of getting on towards a Radion XR30, but an XR30 is something like 200 watts, so it's quite a lot less than that. But actually, most people don't need 200 watts. So I think for the right size, I think I would size that by tank size rather than wattage, because that's plenty. So for a tank like mine behind me, to be fair, I'd probably still get the bigger one because I like full coverage. But for a tank like mine, you'd have the little one, the 44, and then it would give you, the idea is it's got, let me show you if I can scroll down to find, yeah, it's the ring. Is it called Solar Blue? Is that what they've called it? Solar Ring? There's a solar ring that they've called it, and it's basically a ring in the middle of the light. So let me see if I can find a picture of the actual light. No, this is bad. Solar ring, learn more. Kind of. AI, you need to improve your website to actually show the things that are the main features. But basically, in the middle of the LED, in the middle of the light, there is a solar ring, they're calling it, just a little ring of lights, and that is what gives the shimmer. And this supposedly does all the nice shimmer that you get from the likes of Kessel, and also gives coverage and all the other things as well. So you got the solar ring in the middle that is kind of the main LED cluster, which is the equivalent of my Kessel A500X on my setup. And then it's surrounded by loads of other normal LEDs, various different color LEDs that aren't set up for shimmer. And the theory with that is that the solar ring will give you perfect shimmer, which is what I get from my Kessel. And then you get the nicer color, the full spectrum, and the deep blues for fluorescence either side. And you get that all in one light. From what I can see, and you can't really tell until you've actually seen it in the flesh, but from what I can see on the videos, the shimmer is a bit muted. I really like quite a lot of shimmer. You can even see the shimmer over my shoulder in the tank behind me in the cade. So I like quite a lot of shimmer. So I don't think it's actually quite as good as my setup. I wouldn't go changing it for my setup, despite the fact that I love to change my lights. I wouldn't change it because you get a lot more shimmer from a Kessel. You just can't beat Kessels for shimmer. They're amazing, as we all know. So you get a lot more shimmer from a Kessel, but you still get a good amount of shimmer, and it looks much nicer from the videos I've seen than the shimmer you get from AI Hydra 52s or Radions even. Radions, they're fine. The shimmer's okay, and you don't get the disco ball separation, color separation, but it's not particularly pleasing. It's not very natural. If you've ever seen the sea, if you've ever seen the sea, if you've ever seen sun in the sea, you get those proper long shimmer lines, don't you? Which you do get with metal halides, and you get a version of with Kessels. But anyway, I think that looks fantastic. And the pricing in the UK, we've got 410 quid for the little one, which is pretty much the same price as a Radion XR15. I think the Radion XR15 is 420 in the UK, so potato. And the bigger one is, excuse me, I need to cough. The bigger one is £700, whereas the bigger Radion is 830. And you're getting another, 40% of extra, something like that, 40% extra LEDs for the Radion. So actually the bigger one is less well priced, I think. I think that's a little bit expensive. I would have rather that be about 600 quid. So I think you're paying a bit of a premium for that compared to other lights. But it's hard to compare a 135 watt light to a 200 watt light because it's not quite apples and apples. So that is basically, that's the pricing. In the US, I forget what the prices were in the US, but you would have all seen it on various websites. I would personally like them to be bigger as well. They're a good size. I haven't quite seen them. Haven't seen the dimensions actually. I did go looking. Haven't seen the dimensions, but they are a reasonable size. They're bigger than an XR15 or an XR30. But I would like them to be a little bit bigger because so for my tastes anyway, for that tank behind me, I would ideally like something that is covers at least half of the tank. You just can't beat physical coverage. It's great. So these have the AI Edge has edge field optics, they're calling it, which is what you get in the AI blades, and it basically means that it spreads light really, really well. And to be fair, the blades do that really, really well. But you just can't beat physical coverage. Physical coverage is better than anything that you can do with a lens optically to spread light. So you just can't beat physical coverage. So I would have rather see them be a bit bigger. But if they were much bigger with more LEDs, they'd probably be getting quite expensive. And I would rather see them look a little sleeker. I think they look okay, but they're not a good looking light. But it does have a couple of other party tricks that you may or may not have seen. So let me share my screen again and show you the mounting options. So mounting options are really important. There's so many people who will choose the light based on the mounting option over anything else, basically. So, and this is really good to see that this comes with a decent mounting option. So you've got the normal one on the left-hand side here, the rear tilt mount. This attaches to any of the normal AI mounting lights, just the L brackets basically that sits on the back of your tank. But it's got a tilting feature, so you can tilt it forwards and backwards, and you can angle it in or out, which I think is a good thing, because in theory you could. Well, it is a good thing. You could put it in front of your tank and tilt it backwards, so it's pushing towards your corals. Or if you had several of them, like in the middle, you can see the top tilt mount. You could have one that's pointing down, and then one pointing to the left, one pointing to the right, whatever. Where you can point your light wherever you want it. I'm not sure that's massively useful. I'm not sure that's not a game changer or anything, but it's cool that you can angle lights easily. I think to be honest, I'd probably only angle, like if I could angle the lights behind me, the hour blades on the Cade, if I could angle them in slightly, that would be really useful. Whereas I don't necessarily think it would be useful on this, but still, it's a cool option. And I like to see, I don't know if I'd call that innovation, but something different. And then it's got the hanging kit, which is probably what I'd use, because I like to hang lights from the ceiling. There's no word on the price of those. Well, there might be, but I've not looked. I suspect they might be quite expensive. Spectrum. So again, I haven't got my hands on it, but the spectrum looks pretty broad. That looks like a nice wide band spectrum, which is good. And I did notice it's got, what did it say? It's got both warm and cool white LEDs, which not all lights do have. So it's got a pretty, here are the dimensions. Right, so so the big one is 15 inches by 6 inches, and the small one is 11 inches by 6 inches. So they're not massive, really. They're relatively small, but they're not relatively small. They're relatively big compared to other lights, but I would rather they be bigger, to be honest. But hey, especially for the price of the bigger one, I would rather they have gone all out, make that a 200 watt light, same price as a Radion XR30, and make it bigger with more LEDs. But they never tried to do that. I'm pretty sure that all the smaller, all the AI Hydras generally are lower power. They don't go for the full 200 watt jobbies. But I think they look really cool. I think they look like a good option, and they would be on my shortlist if I was setting up a new tank. I think I'd still prefer my setup. If I was setting up a new tank, I think I'd still go for that. But it's a lot more expensive, and it's not a lot better. Well, I haven't actually seen the AI Edge course. But there we go. That's the AI Edge, which we've been able to talk about for 13 minutes because Ryan isn't here, so we don't have to talk about brown gobies or whatever he likes. So let me know in the comments, what do you think of the AI Edge? What's it called? AI Hydra Edge. Do you think it looks awful? Do you hate it? Or do you think it looks wicked? Do you think it's overpriced? Do you think it's reasonably priced? Tell me what you think, and we'll have a chat about it. And Trav says it has white LEDs in a circle, which indeed it does. No real photos of that on the AI website, though, which is, I find weird. That's kind of their main thing. They've got this kind of graphic here that says solar ring, which is roughly what the LEDs look like. But anyway, yeah, it's. I think it's. Oh, there we go. You can see that very brief video. I think it looks cool. I think it looks really good, to be honest. I think it's that's different as well. They've not just done what most people do, bring out another light that's exactly the same, more or less as all other options. They've done something a little bit different, and I appreciate that. So it's always good to have more options. And I think actually, if I'm gonna try not to get too carried away with this, actually, but I think if that is as good as I think it is, it would probably be the light I would recommend for most people. That's how good I think it is. I think it looks really good. But still, remains to be seen. I might not ever actually get my hands on one, but I think it looks good. Jesse Rorabau says that it likes they're trying to innovate. Reef Keeper says overpriced for the amount of power they're putting out, which I think is a fair criticism of the bigger one. Do you think that of both of them, Curiosity? Fair criticism of the bigger one. I think the smaller one is, I was going to say reasonably priced, appropriately priced, given that's roughly the same price of the equivalent competitors. They're still expensive. LEDs in this hobby are all really expensive, and I would much rather they be much cheaper. But, who knows? Prices aren't likely to come down. No, I think it's probably competitively priced, but I agree with the bigger one. I think that's expensive. But then the AI blades are expensive for what you're getting. They're very, very good, but they're expensive. They're not a value light by any stretch of the imagination. UK M120 says reserving judgment until people get to review it properly. Feels expensive to me though. Yeah, I'd love to see it properly. For that price, I would want to go for the Orphec Natura Icon, 150 watts and pretty close to the large version. I think we looked at that recently. Orphec, what was it called? Natura Icon. Yeah, we did. That I like the size. I like the physical dimensions of that, in that it's big and it'll give you a lot of physical coverage. I just think it's a chunky old thing, chunky old unit. It looks like a T5 light. Decline cookies. It looks like a T5. What was that noise? I just got a weird noise. Yeah, it looks like a T5 light to me. So I don't like the look of that. But Orphec, for the right person, they're a very good option as well. What else have we got? Dan's Reef. Everybody thinks they're expensive. Interesting. They're expensive like most other lights out these days. Yeah. Why can't companies do a lower budget version of what they class as the premium light they offer? Yeah. It would be good to see that I think that's great innovation, and it's great to see someone doing something different. But a lot of people don't want all this fancy ultra stuff. You don't need that. You don't need any of that. You just need a simple light. So it would be really good, actually, if you're listening light companies, to make something a bit more simple. So just bring out a basic version. It doesn't have to be the sexy one that everybody wants. You've got your Radeon Gen 6. That's the ultimate one that everybody wants on paper. Bring out a Radeon Gen 6 basic, or the standard version. You get that in all sorts. You get that in cars, you get that in TVs, you get that in all sorts of things. So yeah, good shout. I like that. It would definitely be good to see something a cheaper option, because otherwise you're looking at budget lights like Nycrew, and there are various other budget lights. I'm not so up to speed with most of them, but it would be nice to see one of the bigger companies make something more budget friendly. I shan't hold my breath, but I would like it. I agree. Weave to Achieve says, will it give the shimmer if you don't run the whites inches solar circle? I think you mean just the whites in the solar circle. Yeah, I don't know. I suspect it will be reduced shimmer. So I find even with the Kessels, let me have a look at them. Even the Kessels are relatively blue at the moment. When the Kessels give the best shimmer when they're on full white at high intensity, of course, and when they're on blue only, the shimmer's still there, but it's not the same. So you probably want to have the white fairly high on that to have the shimmer, but I don't know until I've seen it, of course. Anubis, yeah, the blade was a budget option that works great. I don't think it's a budget option. It's a budget option in some setups. So I had a 12-inch blade on my Fluval Evo 13.5, the Grow version. It was fantastic because that was even cheaper than the AI Prime 26, the small one. AI Prime, yeah, just the AI Prime. It was cheaper than that, and it was a budget for that. But I think generally they're not. I don't think they're a budget light at all. Budget, I think, is half the price of a Radeon, for example. Anubis Kruger, what do you do to protect the electronics in your equipment, especially the lights? Do you mean like from surges and that sort of stuff? I don't do anything special to protect for surge protection. I've got a 13 amp fuse. That's about it. I don't have anything special for that. Years ago I used to buy you get lighting, you get power socket extensions with like five sockets or whatever, and they'd come with a £10,000 guarantee. So if it destroys your equipment, they'll pay out or whatever. And I've stopped buying them because I don't find them to be that useful. But no, so I don't do anything to protect them specifically. I think that's what you're meaning, but tell me if that's not what you mean. Cristiano Frade says there is a black box that almost copy Radeon. Yeah, what's it called? A8SE? A8SE? I can't. Is something like that. A8SE Reef light. Yeah. Here we go. I'll bring it up. This is what you're talking about. I don't think there's not like a brand name. I think it's just called the A8SE. Oh, here we go. A8SE2. And this is on AliExpress. 150 quid. How many watts is it? 240 watts. Wow. That's a lot. I think that's more than a Radeon, to be fair. And yeah, here are the photos. it looks a lot like it. I mean, the Nikru looks like a Radion, and I don't. And this looks. It doesn't. The Nikru doesn't look like a Radion underneath. The body is the same, but the lenses are totally different. Whereas this looks exactly like a Radion. They've completely copied it. I'm not a massive fan of when the budget companies completely copy the design of established companies. It's a little hard to feel sorry for the big companies given how expensive lights are, but I don't really like when companies completely rip off other companies and try to make it look the exact same as like something like a Radion. I get why they do it. I'd rather they innovate and make their own designs, but it is a sort of thing that people talk about it. If it didn't look like that, if they come up with their own design, no one would talk about it and no one would buy it. So I kind of get it. I don't really like it, and I'd like it if the budget brands would step up a level from that, because there are a couple that have got to a reasonable level now. I'd like it if they then step up, so they're not just copying, they're making their own thing, even if it's just the way it looks. And it doesn't have to be innovative like the AI Edge. It just has to be, I think, just do your own thing. I'd really like to see that. You get taken a bit more seriously, and you might find yourself in mainstream shops and all that sort of stuff, but then price will probably go up as well. Roy's Reef thinks we need more black box lights, cheap and powerful, bring back the Evergrows. Evergrows are fantastic lights. So they're reef breeders in the US. In the US, actually, reef breeders are quite expensive. And in the UK, Evergrows got quite expensive. But I had 2 Evergrows over my Aquapora tank, and they look fantastic. The control was awful, really clunky. And I found that the lights, unless you bought an aftermarket controller, the lights, when they ramp up, they step up. They don't ramp up smoothly. They step up, and it looks a bit naff when if you happen to catch a time point when your lights are bumping up. But apart from that, they're really good. They were really, really good. They will grow corals just like anything else. They're very, very good indeed. Red Sea Reef Lead 50 is probably a budget version they offer, to be fair. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's not. How much is a Red Sea Reef Lead 50? I think that's about 200 quid still. I don't think that's that cheap. 250, really? Wow. Yeah, that's not budget. Given that's only a 50 watt light as well. If that was a 100 watt light, I'd call it budget, but 250 quid for a 50 watt light, I mean, it's useful for a small tank because you don't need a more expensive Radion XR15, for example, but it's not budget. So if we're looking for budget, we want proper budget. I see what you're talking about, Anubis Kruger. You use Corrosion X on all equipment above the surface. Yeah, so like a rust blocker or something. So I don't use anything for that. I do put Vaseline on the hinges to my cabinet because cabinet hinges in any sump will get rusty over time, probably inside a year. But apart from that, I never bother. And I've never had anything, touch wood, I've never had anything go rusty, majorly rusty anyway, over my tank. But I see what you mean now. Gary McConnell, no word of the 16 HD getting an update. No, they've not changed that for years as well. I had that. You mean the AI Prime, I think, right? So I had one of those on my Fluval Evo, and I did really like it. But as soon as I moved to the AI Blade, it just put that thing to shame. The spread was so much better on the Blade than the AI HD, the AI Prime, sorry. So I'd like to see them improve that. But to be fair, the AI Prime isn't particularly powerful. So if you give it more spread, you're going to lose power, which is what the Radeon Gen 6 have done. And they've gone too far. So now there's too much spread, not enough power. They need to dial back to, I think they'd got it right with the Gen 5. So there's probably not much the Prime could do unless they started to bump up more, to add more LEDs and more juice, more power. Was there anything else I wanted to tell you about the AI Edge? No, I think that is everything. And I think we've got a reasonable cross-section of the chat. I think they are seen as expensive, but potentially good, and people like them, I think. But we'll see what happens when people actually get hold of them. All right. What else are we going to do? The other thing in the news is actually the headline topic. So I also wanted to talk about the aquacultured Scolys. So this is big news. So this was the next piece of news is from reefkeepingnews.com, which is that TMC, which is the main importer in Europe in the UK anyway, have brought in a load of aquacultured Scolys. I haven't been able to find out exactly where they came from. apart from the fact that they were from Australia. That's about all I've been able to find out. But I actually bought one of these myself. They came out this week. In the UK, we can't import Scolys. It's since 2021, so 4 years. The government decided, actually, I found out, I can tell you why. I found out why this weekend or this week. So the government decided in 2021 to stop importing Scolys and various other corals. And that was because from Australia, they used to do coral imports based on, and I got to repeat first, there are no facts on this. So if I get this wrong, don't take this as a fact. But so when you were importing corals from Australia, it used to be done on weight, which is part of the reason if you ever see an Australian aquapora, there's no base on it. It's completely cut off, all nice and neat. Whereas an Indonesian aquapora, they're normally on a little bit of base because they were done on numbers. So it doesn't matter how heavy they are. Whereas with Australia, it was always done on weight, which is why they never had, one of the reasons they don't have a base on them, because if you're shipping a base, that's extra weight, and the quotas are done on weight, so you'd be able to pull less corals out. And they switched that, I believe they switched that to numbers. So, and when they did that, suddenly the UK said, well, hang on a second, there's no data on these. And there was no data on the numbers being imported. It's not quite true because weight is still data. If you can, and you can roughly work out from that how many corals are being pulled in, a very broad estimate, but it's not, there's no data. It's just that the data is different. But anyway, the UK government decided, well, we don't have data on the numbers. Okay, we've got data on the weight of corals being pulled in, but not numbers. So we don't know if that's sustainable. So we're going to stop it basically until there is the data coming through. So for that reason, we can't get Scolys in the UK, or if you do, it shouldn't have been imported. So that has changed now potentially with this workaround. I think these are from Monsoon Aquatics, I think, but I'm guessing, I don't know. All I've been able to find out is they're from Australia. I think they're from Monsoon Aquatics, and they are aquacultured. So they have been, originally there was a coral that was in the ocean, of course. It was pulled out of the ocean, chopped up, fragged up into however many pieces, 4 pieces, I presume, quarters, and then healed and grown out. So you can see, and this, I don't know what generation these are, but these are all tiny. These were not spawned in captivity. Monsoon Aquatics are working on that. And about 18 months, 2 years ago, they were spawning them and they were getting to a reasonable size. But this is not what they are, is my understanding. These are aquaculture. So they're fragged and settled. And that is okay because you're not pulling corals out of the ocean. You're not selling corals that have come straight from the ocean. You're selling frags. I presume that it's not just you pull one out, frag it in half, and then it's okay to sell it. And these things are tiny, by the way. So you can see that there it is. So that's mine over my shoulder. And you can see in the thumbnail for this that it's about something like an inch across. It's really quite small. So they are really, really, really minute. And that's why I would guess that they have been fragged a few times. But who knows? But they're quite expensive. If you've bought one, by the way, let me know how much you paid for it in the chat. So that one, the one I bought, is the one on the thumbnail, and it's a bleeding apple Scolly, which I don't have a bleeding apple Scolly. I've wanted one for ages, and it was 300 quid, 299 quid. So they're really expensive. I don't know what they're like in the States. In the UK, when we could get Scollies, a bleeding apple would have cost that kind of money, 350, something like that. But that was so it's not more expensive, but that was for a full size one, which is bigger than a golf ball, whereas this is tiny. This is absolutely minute. It's an inch across. So you're paying the same price. You're just getting a much smaller coral, which I don't mind, to be fair. I think I would really, if it's going to be sustainable or a proper thing, you want them to be roughly half that price because they are small. But they're a hardy coral, and I just plan on feeding it. You can see I've put it on a frag rack right at the top of my tank because I want it to be easily accessible from 160, 150 are the other ones. So I want it to be accessible for feeding. So I've fed mine twice, and I'll show you what it looks like when you actually feed it. I've just put, it's funny, I put a few pieces of LPS pellets on it. It's this stuff I use. Vitalis LPS pellets. I've had these ages. I should check the best before date. February 2025, right? I've got 2 weeks to use basically an entire tub. I need to throw them away and buy more. But anyway, so I fed that thing twice. And let me show you what it looks like when you feed it. So there are a couple of bits of food on it. And it didn't want the second one, but it just grabbed that one little bit, munched it away, gobbled it down. Yummy, 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 done. And so I left this. This is like a 15-minute clip that I time lapsed, obviously, and I left that on there for another 5 or 10 minutes, and it didn't budge. So it just wanted one. It's got a very small appetite. It's a tiny little coral, so it just wanted one pellet. And this is the problem with these. This is a 60-gram tub of pellets, but there's millions of them in there. And I don't like to feed my corals heavily. But anyway, so I plan on feeding my Scully that, and I think it'll probably take a couple of years to get to the point where that's a close to full size. So you're going to have to spend a bit of time on it, and you're going to have to put up with a very small coral in the meantime, and it's very expensive. But yeah, and the other thing is, so they're sold out now. Where is this? I got it from Big Kahuna. It was Reef Keeper Moss End. Did they have any left? I think no. I think they'd sold out. So I saw that go off, and then the thing with this is they went really quickly. They're expensive, but there was no shortage of demand. So they went out on their Facebook page. They went out across a few Facebook pages across UK shops, and I saw the post about half an hour after it went live, and I sent the shop a message saying, "How much is it? How much is the nice one?" Expecting them to have already sold it, and they hadn't. And I phoned up and paid within about half a second because it was going to go. And as far as I can see, I think there are still a couple around. I don't know where, but if you look on Facebook on various shops up and down the country, you might find one. But they mostly sold out very quickly indeed. And I don't know when we're going to get more back in. Hopefully plenty more, but given that you've got to frag Scolys and let them heal, and so if you frag a Scully, let's say you frag it into quarters, it doesn't just reform into that shape. It's like a pizza slice, isn't it? So that must have been, and the one I've got is circular, it's round. So it must have been settled quite a while. So my guess is that these are going to come through. These will be a trickle, and you won't see millions of these sold out. But yeah, I think it was Aqua in Lincolnshire that I saw, which is the place that runs Aqua Edge, M&L Aquatics apparently as well. But there we go. So that's I think that's big news as well, because we just haven't had Scolys at all, and now we can get them. And it's aquaculturing, which is really cool. I would love to see the next step is spawning. And what they called Monsoon Aquatics do spawn them. They have spawned them. They know how to do it. It's just the Parker's Reef did a video where he went to Monsoon Aquatics and got shown around. And I think they were something like the Scullies that they spawned were about 6 months old. They had quite a few of them, probably a couple of hundred. They're about 6 months old, and they were tiny. They were smaller than mine. But I think if they feed them properly, if they work out how to grow them, they'll be able to do it a lot more. And if you can spawn them, then you don't have to buy one. You don't have to get one Scully, cut it into 10 pieces. You can spawn and get 1,000 straight away. Well, I say straight away, after 6 months of caring for them and feeding them and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, really cool. I like that. Reef Keeper Rugby had 6 on Friday. AAC have some as well. So there's still a few kicking around. But my local fish shop at Moss End, Reef Keeper Moss End, sold out pretty much instantly. All right. Is that the end? I think it might actually be the end of the news, Eating fragged and settled 299 quid. Yeah, that is therefore the end of the news. But fear not, because we've done everything upside down, and we've got plenty of stuff to talk about before we wrap up. I'm going to refresh member questions. There was only one member questions, and it was how many of the Scolys did I buy, which was brief to achieve, and I bought just the one. If I'm completely honest, I couldn't afford one, let alone more. And I only wanted a bleeding apple Scully. I only wanted one. I've got a nice war paint Scully that I bought a while ago. And actually, that was one that I bought. I'll see if I've got pictures of it. I bought that bought that from Reef Keeper Moss End as well, and it was almost dead basically. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago when we could get them legally, and I bought mine. It was on the verge of death. It was an absolute state. No, I haven't got the clip, but it was 90% skeleton. There was a tiny bit of flesh in the middle, and I said, look, I think I might be able to save it, but it's going to take a while. How much will you give it to me for? And I got it for 50 quid. And it took me, here it is, in fact, it took me a long time. Here we go. That's what it looked like when I got it. It's one sad coral, big old gaping mouth, lots of sharp edges around the side, no real flesh on it. It looked awful. And it took me a long time of feeding it and looking after it, but they're hardy, they're tough. They will come back. And in fact, I can show you what that looked like a couple of years later. In fact, you know what? I'll show you. So I started feeding it Red Sea Reef Energy, which is, and you can see it responds. But actually, I prefer to target feed stuff now. And this was, I don't know, a couple of months in. So you can see it's got flesh and it's looking a little bit more healthy already. And then let's go back to, let's see what it looks like pretty much now. It's pretty much recovered completely. It just looks like a, I don't know if I've got a, no, I don't think I've, oh, here we go. Yeah. Whoop. There we go. So this is it now. Looking really good, looking really healthy. You wouldn't know it was ever sad. So they are actually quite hardy. The only thing with them is supposedly they're like cooler tank temperatures, which is one of the reasons I run my 2 tanks at 24 degrees C. But they're pretty easy. They're pretty easy to look after. If you feed them as well, they respond to it. They have a strong physical response, which lots of corals don't, and they seem to appreciate it. They like munching down food. So yeah, they are good. Simon Bishop, he's love a Scully, but with angels and rabbitfish, I'm a bit nervous about spending 300 quid on a few mouthfuls of fish necks. Yeah. I don't know what angels you've got, but I think I had mine with a what's it called? A Regal Angel, but I can't remember if I moved the Scully before I got the Regal Angel, so I might have moved it on. The rabbitfish is fine with it, although I did have a one spot foxface in my water box tank before, and he started pecking at my war paint Scully. He didn't demolish it, and he didn't actually do any real damage. It was sulking constantly for like a week or a month or whatever. And eventually I saw it physically. I saw it with my own eyes biting the Scully. So at that point, I had to rehome the foxface. So yeah, they are a risk. I can see why you would be nervous. Just looking, dream corals have Scully frags. Dream corals in Europe. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, Gary, you're in Ireland, aren't you? So I think that means you can get European corals, which is cool. Dream corals always have, they go for they like fluorescent pictures, which I prefer. They look great, but I wouldn't mind some more natural light. What's the company in America who does fish on Instagram? I always talk about, who do really nice photos. That is the gold standard. It's fish, to be fair, not corals, so it's different. But those guys, for me, whoever they are, and I'm going to try to remember them because they're worth a shout. They are the gold standard in fish. I can't remember what they're called, and I'd be scrolling down forever. Someone might nudge me in the chat and tell me who they are. But anyway, yeah, better photography all around, please. Okay, so. That is from the we've got member questions done. Let me just refresh that, make sure none of those are coming. We're going to chat to the chat before I move on to the Reef Dork Fish of the Week and the Reef Dork Gore of the Week. Excuse me. So if you have any questions, you want to ask me anything, you want to talk to me about anything, put it in the chat. It can be literally anything. Nothing is off bounds. And I've missed a question. I'm not going to try to pronounce your second name, but Pradipan, I think. He says, question is, do we think they will get to the original size? Yes, I absolutely think they will get to the original size. I think it will take a while. I think it will take a real long time. 2 years might be optimistic, to be fair. Scully is not the coral of the week, but it would have been a good shout. But yeah, so they will. I'm pretty sure they'll get to the original size, the full size. It's going to take quite a long time before it does. So, but that's the thing. That's the penalty you have to pay. Well, apart from the fact that they're extremely expensive as well. All right. Whilst I'm waiting for questions to come in, actually, we're going to do the Reef Dork Fish of the Week. And as I say that, I've realised I have not brought the Reef Dork Fish of the Week up. There we go. Okay, now, I'm hoping Ryan hasn't done this one before. And I'm trying to see if I can find a really good photo. Okay, so that's not the best photo. That's a good photo. Hang on a second. Charles Bettany. It's called Average Biker. What's your bike channel called on YouTube? It's Average Biker. Right. Yes. Okay. Tom and Etang is the Reef Dork Fish of the Week. So I don't know if Ryan's had this one before. So I had one of these guys in my water box tank, which was 2 foot long, 2 feet front to back, and 16 inches tall, something like that. Not very tall, small tank. It was 150 litres. What's that? 35 gallons, something like that. 30 gallons. I don't know. Not very big. And he was happy as Larry. I had him for about a year. relatively easy to keep. You get them, look how tiny that one is. You can get them pretty small sometimes in shops. And they do, to be fair, they do get relatively big over time. If you give them the right kind of food and all that sort of stuff, then you will get them. To a decent size, and to the point where they'll outgrow small tanks. But they're brilliant for small tanks, and they're great for all kind of size tanks. I say they're brilliant for small tanks, short term, and I wouldn't put one in a Fluval Evo, for example, but I would temporarily put one in something like the Cade, although that's borderline too small. But what I would do, I want one of those in. One of the reasons that's the fish of the week, the Reef Dork fish of the week, is because I want one for my main tank. I'm going to open my window, actually, it's a little bit warm. I want one for my main tank because at the moment I don't have anything that is that does the scraping. I've got my rabbit fish that bites all the big chunky algae, but nothing that can constantly scrapes away at rocks. I used to have the white-tailed coal tank for that, and I used to have what else was it? There was another. Oh, the blenny, algae blenny, starry blenny. Used to have one of those as well, but I don't have anything at the moment, so I want one of those guys in my main tank. My algae is still, it's okay. It's not doing too badly, but there's more algae than I would like. And we have a super chat from Reef Ed. Hey Alex, shout out from Texas. I'm excited about the Edge. How's that 800 G2 treating you? And Reef Ed, by the way, is a new YouTube channel that you should check out. And I'm going to show you exactly who it is. It's you will know he's a member, a Reef Dork member. Let me see if I can find him. If he's quite new, so he won't show up if you search him. So what that does mean, I look in my playlist of liked videos, and that will bring it up. Full playlist. Bear with me. Here we go. Right. Let me just click on that. There we go. Right. Here we go. Are you ready? Are you ready? Hang on. There we go. So this is the channel at the Reef Ed. In fact, if I put this in the description, in fact, you know what? Even better. Well, not even better. At the Reef Ed, you might even be able to click on his picture if you think about it. But there you go. This is a new reefing channel. He sent me a message earlier and was asking about audio and how you get audio right in a big echoey room. Very difficult. Is the short answer. But he's made a couple of videos. One of them, the only one I've watched, to be fair, is about bristleworm removal, which I disapprove of greatly, by the way. No killing bristleworms. But it's a good video. It's a good video, and he'll do well. He has 8 subscribers so far. And to be fair, in a week to get 600 views on your first video, that's pretty good going. On your second video, that's very, very, very good going indeed. So I would recommend him. Well worth checking out. Thank you for the super chat. How's that 800 G2 treating me? It's going all right. So I now have fish back in the tank and lots of fish in there. So I put out of quarantine, I put a yellow wrasse and a scarlet hawkfish the other week. The scarlet hawkfish had just started breathing heavily in quarantine in the last couple of days. And I was a little bit worried about him. I didn't think he was doing well with copper, but he's instantly totally fine. I also put a Pictus blenny in there. The only thing is, it's funny, the fish that I've had in there before then, there are 3 that kind of hang out together that went through quarantine together mostly. There's the rabbit fish, the macro wrasse, can't remember what it's called, leopard wrasse, and there was one other one as well. I can't remember. And then there's the angel as well, the Japanese angel. They all hang out together. And as soon as these guys went in, the long-nosed hawkfish, I don't think they liked the company. Now everything's kind of settled down now, but the Pictus blenny got pestered by the long-nosed hawkfish, and that's not uncommon. Hawkfish are generally, I think, pretty peaceful, but small tube-shaped fish like gobies and blennies, they can get packed at. And he chased the little Pictus blenny a little bit to start with, but then I put in a 3D printed shameless plug. I put in a 3D printed coral island, and the ones I make have got these little blenny holes basically. So I also have one in the cave behind me where my gobies are living with a pistol shrimp, and that was somewhere for him to hide. So suddenly he had a hiding place, and he's been in there hiding, and he's doing all right. He's doing good. The yellow wrasse got a bit of chasing from the macro wrasse because the yellow wrasse is about 1 inch long. He's absolutely tiny, but he's settled in and he's okay now. The scarlet hawkfish is getting chased by the long-nosed hawkfish. I think I've never actually seen it, but he hides in the rockwork constantly. he'll swim out to get food and then swim straight back in. So he's just not feeling very confident at the moment. So I suspect there might be a little bit of argy-bargy between those two. But I've had a scarlet and a long-nosed hawk in together before, and they've been absolutely fine. In fact, I would describe them as mates. So I think they'll all be fine. But yeah, the tank is doing well. Thanks for asking. Andrew G, and I'm going to take a sip of beer whilst I read your question. Do you ever get bored with a stable tank? Yeah, all the time. My main display is nearly 2 years old and looks fine. Things are good and growing, but I've no room for new corals and it's just on autopilot. You, Andrew, are describing the tank over my shoulder, my left shoulder, the Cade. And maybe I can see. So that was set up 18th of August 2023 is when I set that up. I've just checked a photo. So it's 18 months old roughly. Yeah, in fact, exactly 18 months old, more or less. And it's on autopilot. There were problems at first. I had cyano, maybe. I had cyano. It was cyano. I had loads of cyano, and it just looked a bit ugly. Corals weren't really. They were doing fine, but nothing special. And then after I cleared all of those problems, everything started doing really well. And now, actually, every time I see the tank now on this video, funnily enough, if I see it over my shoulder, the corals are growing really well. That trumpet coral is doing really well, and the hammers at the top are getting big. So it's doing great. There is some room for new corals, but not really. I could probably put 2 more in there, and I'm not feeling inspired to do so. And yeah, actually, I think is it clownfish? I thought the clownfish was in. I thought he was in the trumpet coral hosting it for a second, but he's not. So no. So it's basically, it is on autopilot, same as yours. And am I bored of it? Yeah, a little bit. I keep thinking about upgrading it, which is ridiculous. I keep thinking about upgrading it, and I would like a bigger tank in here. I don't have much room. This is a tiny. I've done a behind the scenes tour of this room on the Reef Dork Extra channel. So if you ever want to know what it actually looks like, it's tiny. It's 7 feet front to back. It's absolutely minute. So I don't have much room for a big tank, but I would have room for a Red Sea Reefer 170, for example, and you can get them pretty cheap secondhand. So I've thought about that, which would be, I don't know, 50% bigger, 30% bigger maybe than that tank, which is a decent step up. That would let me start again with escape, put in new corals, put in different corals, and so on. So I'm a little bit bored of that, but every time I think I'm bored of it, and it's a very average tank, that tank, I've just got Duncan corals, GSP, trumpet corals, hammers, nothing special. A couple of clownfish. Clownfish are cool, and the 2 Yashigami actually cool. But nothing is special in there. No one would look at that tank and go, "That's absolutely amazing." It's a showpiece tank, but it's healthy. And the thing that stops me upgrading it is it's doing really well. It's on autopilot, which in a way is boring, but it's also very, very good. I do a water change. I try every week, but probably every fortnight I do a 25% water change, which keeps everything going. I think my anemone doesn't like the water change because I never preheat the new water, so I think it doesn't like that. But anyway. I do a water change every fortnight, roughly. I don't test parameters as often as I should do, probably once a month on average. And it just does well. The corals are looking really good. And that's what stops me, is that if I were to start again, yeah, you've got the fun and that I'd have a bigger tank and all this sort of stuff, but you'd throw away all of that hard work, because really the first year of having a tank can be pretty terrible. You can have problems left, right, and center. And then when you get to the point when everything's going easy, it's easy to forget how difficult it was. Because now it's been at least 6 months, maybe a year since this tank has been running smoothly. Probably 6, 7, 8, 9 months, something like that, since it's been running smoothly. And I've had that easy streak since then. But when it was looking terrible before, not terrible, it never looked terrible. It had a cyano on the sand bed and it didn't look great. And the corals weren't grown out, so it just looked quite empty and all that sort of stuff. It's before I put corals on the back wall, which has totally changed the way that tank looks as well. Before I did all that, it wasn't looking very inspiring, and now it's grown out. It's actually looking really nice, to be fair. So yeah, I do kind of get bored of it, and I do sometimes think about breaking it down and starting again. I'd probably transfer some of the corals over. I do sometimes think about that, but every time I think about that, after about an hour of thinking how great it would be, I think, Yeah, do you remember what it was like when you first set up a tank, or when you first set up any tank, and you have 6 months of pain because you get algae everywhere, your corals die for no reason, and all that sort of thing. So, and it looks empty and it looks terrible. The rock work is all white, and it's kind of, which looks great on day one, but then you get bored of it, and then the rock goes brown, and you get algae everywhere. You get diatoms, and you might get dinos, and so yeah. Every time I think about it, I just think, this is actually good. This is what I want. And I do, this is one thing I really want with that tank. I want it to be completely grown out. At the moment it's nicely grown out, but it's nowhere near finished. And I think that tank will look really cool. Although there's nothing special in there. I think when those corals are all grown out, it will look really cool. When it's properly filled out, I think it will look awesome. The only thing I am thinking of doing is the GSP there. I might move that on. And I might replace it with, I've got a Scully, not a Scully, what's the Tracky? I've got a Tracky in the main tank that I'm going to move over to this tank, I think, because I'm slightly nervous it'll get nipped at some point by a fish I decide to put in later. But yeah, so completely with you on that one, actually, Andrew. You do get a little bit bored of it. And it's kind of, the journey is the fun part of the hobby, right? Because there's always something to do, and then when it's finished, you kind of want to tear it down. And there will be a point when you should tear a tank down, I think, but I'm not there yet. I think there's at least another year, probably longer, before I should get to that point. So no, I'm not going to be tearing it down. But I get the point. And Reef Edge says the channel was just made for a bit of fun. Don't judge, lol. Hashtag Bristleworm Hater Club. But yeah, it's a good. Genuinely, I'm not just saying this. So I emailed him earlier. That's it for a first video. That's cracking. Absolutely fantastic. Really impressed, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it. Go and check it out. Just don't call bristleworms. Big Kahuna says, and I'm going to take a sip of mon beverage. Says, what fish would you put in a 4-foot shallow tank of around 100 litre volume? Wow, that's seriously shallow. Has a protein skimmer and a weekly 30% water change. Wow, that's a big water change. Well, I suppose it's basically the same as I do on my tank, my cade. 4 foot, that's massive. What are the full dimensions of that, Big Kahuna? Which is a funny name, by the way. What are the full dimensions of that? What fish will I put? Because the issue with that is that must be very shallow. What's that, a foot tall, something like that? Maybe even shorter, not very big front to back. I would put small fish in that. I wouldn't want anything, maybe something like a tummy tang. But I would have mostly small fish in that. Little things like a blenny, pick any blenny you want. Pictus blenny, a cool Midas blenny, maybe a little bit too swimmy. Probably a clownfish pair, a geometric pygmy perch I would have. I'd probably have a scarlet hawkfish because they're awesome. What else? Just small fish. I'd have a yellow clown goby. I'm going to get a yellow clown goby for the cade. But the best thing to do is this. I get asked all the time, what fish should I get? And I try to say the same thing, which is you don't want the fish I want. You want, so if I'll recommend what fish I want and I would get, but won't necessarily float your boat. So go on liveaquaria.com. It's a really good resource. You can't buy anything from there in the UK, but in the US you can. But go on liveaquaria.com and you can filter by nano fish, beginner fish, tangs, anything. You can do all sorts of filters and it will show you loads of different fish. And that's a really good way of getting inspiration for your next fish. When's the next tank tour? Really enjoyed the last one. Soon. There was one that I was going to try to arrange. Oh yes, I forgot to text him again. I'm really bad with this. Peter, I am going to message you. I meant to message you the other day and then I forgot again. I do have one booked in the diary, and I'm going to get 2 at the same time. It's a couple of weeks away now. When is it? Yeah, so middle of March, end of March probably, is the next one I've got booked in, but I'm going to try to do more. Try and do another one before then. So yeah, coming soon, probably March, maybe before then. I don't know. There's still loads of video. I've got 2 videos written that I keep putting off because the script or the bullet points were the easy part, and all the footage I've got to record to get it done is going to be a mammoth effort. But I should crack on with those. So I've got a few other videos to do first, but I will do at least one at the end of March, probably 2 at the end of March, and then I might even squeeze one in before then. I don't know. We'll see. What am I sipping on? Howdy from Pasadena. It is Peroni. Nastrat Zero Peroni. Wicked beer. Yeah, just got me a Red Sea Reef for 170 for 150 euros from a reefing friend. Bargain. So you can get them cheap second-hand tanks. You can get relatively new. You can get 6 months old tanks quite often, especially if you've got a little bit of patience on eBay. You'll find Red Sea Reefers, loads of Red Sea Reefers around 6 months old. And if it's 6 months old, it's probably in pretty good condition. So every now and then you get people who have crazy ideas of the value of a tank. And if you're ever selling a tank and it's full of corals and full of fish, I can tell you now, people don't want that. That's just a hassle to break it down. I often see tanks that are completely packed full. I was talking to Ryan about this week. Completely packed full of corals, and someone will put it up on eBay for quite an unrealistic price. When realistically, most people don't want the hassle of. People don't want a completed tank. We've just been talking about how the fun part is the journey and getting this. People don't want a finished tank, and they probably don't want the same corals that you've chosen. But you can get, if you just buy the bare tank, you can get some bargains, which is for show the right way to go. Sorry, Reefer says, saw one of the Scolys in Moss End this weekend. Understand the price, but I nearly threw up at the price for the size. Gorgeous. So, yeah, they're not very big. 4x1x1. Okay. The wastewater for my SPS is used for the water changes. Oh, I see. Okay. Waste water. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would go on Live Aquaria, but I've given you the list of the fish that I would do. I pay my respect to someone who changes 30% every week. Hard work. That's the thing. So obviously mine's slightly smaller than that, but 25%. I just use brewing buckets. It's actually really easy. If it's only like if I were to do a 25-30% water change on my main tank, that would be difficult. But this is, I use these little. They're not that small, to be fair, but these brewing buckets, just if you Google brewing buckets, they come with a gauge, what's it called, a volume checker marks, so you can see exactly how much water you're adding really easily, and you just put two of them buckets inside each other so they don't take up much space. Fill it with water, fill it with 950 grams of salt, put a pump in there, turn it overnight. Next day, siphon some out, pour that in, job done. Doesn't take long at all, so it's good. Korosato, which sounds Japanese to me, but probably isn't. They are great for looking at fish, but recently they are shipping out fish that ended up or dead or almost dead when they come in. Bad times. Last fish I bought showed up with no heat pack. Reef Dork says, new AI Edge. What do you think will be the new Radion G7s? I don't know. So I would like to see. I don't think we really need Radion changes. They bring out a new update every 2 years, which is roughly 2 years. It's something like that. I think it was longer over COVID. We don't need an upgrade every 2 years, and I actually think they got it right with the Gen 5. So I think they will go back to the Gen 5 because that was the right level of spread versus punch. The Gen 6, I had one briefly, a Radion XR15 on my my cage, but I didn't like it. They're not very powerful. Loads of spread, which is great, but you want more power, I think, from an expensive light like that. So I'd like to see them go back to a narrower spread. But I don't know. There's nothing that I look at. I don't look at the Radions. Every time they bring out a new light, they might blend the spectrum better, or they might have a slightly broader spectrum, or it might be a bit more spread. It's marginal improvements. It's like when you buy a new phone. So Samsung, I've got a Samsung S24, and they brought out the new one, S25. The differences are they're tiny and just not worth upgrading. I want a significant step. So for me, I'm not excited about the prospect of a Radion Gen 7. I would rather they wait another 2 or 3 years, so we have 5 years in between generations, and bring out something that they've worked on and done research on for years and makes a real difference. Whereas a different spread or a slightly better blended spectrum, whatever, I don't think that's very exciting. So what do I want from a Radion Gen 7? I'd like them to just go back to the Gen 5. Make it cheaper. Go back to the Gen 5 and make it cheaper. How about that? What else? The price, lol. Yeah, exactly. Amanda Davidson says she's struggling to get an all-in-one smaller tank. Nothing other than in Ireland. So the Cade is an all-in-one. That's the S2 Nano 500, something like that it's called. They are quite expensive in the UK anyway. They're pretty expensive. It's a premium price tank. There are some amazing features. That's one of the videos I've got I've scripted basically, but the script is like 10 pages long. It's going to be about 20-minute long video, which is long for me. They're very good, but they are expensive. I would go for a second-hand Red Sea Max Nano, maybe, but they're a little bit small. The tank I've had a couple of times is the what is it? Aqua One Mini Reef, Aqua One Mini Reef 120, and there's a bigger version, a 160 or 180 or something. They're really good, and if you buy just the tank, they're fantastic, and they're generally a reasonable price. They look smart. The plumbing is a little bit fiddly to dial in and get quiet, but apart from that, they're really, really good. The only problem with them is that they come with bundled equipment. So if you buy them when they were new, I think they might have even been discontinued now, may still be around. But when you buy them brand new or as a bundled job lot together, they come with all this equipment, and the stock equipment it comes with is rubbish. The skimmer's enormous, the return pump is buzzy, the lights look terrible. Actually, the physical light looks pretty good. But the standard equipment is rubbish. So you'll often get people trying to sell it with all of the equipment, thinking it's worth a lot of money, when the reality is most people are going to throw away that equipment and just replace it. But if you can buy just the tank on its own, they're really good. They're good for the price. They're cheap, but don't pay new prices, because they're overpriced if you buy them new. But if you buy them second hand, they're really, really good. Disco L176. What's the maximum amount of time you would leave your tank? Yeah, I mean, if you've got an auto feeder and a big freshwater reservoir, a couple of weeks is fine, really. The freshwater reservoir is probably the main concern, I think, because you're going to run out of auto top off water. So you need a big tank. I don't think I'd want to leave it. The Cade, fine, I'd leave that for a couple of weeks, no problem. The main tank, I would be a little bit more apprehensive. So whenever I go away for any long period of time, I have people come in to look after the tanks. So my main tank, a week maybe, and even then, if you've got finicky fish, you don't want to be leaving them on an auto feeder that's just dropping in pellets, for example. You want to be feeding the right kind of food for them. So I guess it depends on various things, what corals, all this sort of stuff. But I don't like going away for more than 2 weeks, basically. I don't like leaving the tank I love going away for more than 2 weeks. Just don't like leaving the tank for more than 2 weeks. But then I want to get back for my cat as well after 2 weeks. So Hoof-hearted. Hey Alex, have you seen Sydney Reefing YouTuber new project of a floating reef that he is lighting from the bottom as well as top? I have not. What's he called? Sydney Reefing. Sydney, I wonder where he's from. Sydney Reefing, 5,000 subscribers. Oh, hang on. No, world's first upside down tank. Let's have a look at that. Let's do this live. Let's skip on to the actual tank. There we go. How's he lighting that? What lights is he using? Okay. Kind of like the concept. I wonder what lights he's using. Is he putting lights in the... I can't see what lights he's using. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't do it myself, but I like it when people try something new. So cool. Nice. And that is Sydney Reefing, if you want to go and check it out. Floating aquascape as well. It feels like that would be... I think I'd want dark spaces. I think dark spaces are good, especially for fish. But there we go. I have now seen it. Have you checked out the AI Hydra Edge? I haven't checked it out, but I've seen the same videos that you guys probably have as well, to be fair. And there's some chat about that at the start of the stream, so you can wind back and see it. Don't even like leaving my tank to go to work. Yeah, I know. Going away for 3 weeks, need a tank sitter. Yeah, I mean, if you've got like the Cade, I would happily put that on a timer, a food timer with an auto feeder, with because I've got 2 gobies and 2 clownfish, that's it, and they would be fine on a food timer. There would be a fair to reasonable chance that you'd come back to a lot of algae because it might overfeed, but I'd be all right with that. I'd be okay. The thing is just there's always something that happens. Like you'll come downstairs in the morning and your auto top off will have turned off for some reason, or something will have happened, and you just need to be there to plug it on. So that's the thing that stops me or makes me worry when I go away, is that something will happen and something will go wrong. So the Tunzi osmolator is supposedly one of the most or generally considered to be one of the most reliable auto top offs, but I fairly often from time to time had issues with it where it would stop dispensing water and I had to go and manually intervene. If that happened when you're away, then if you're away for 3 weeks, your salinity is going to spike and you could come back to everything dead. So there's a cheery thought. Enjoy your holiday. But a 3-week holiday is cool. And I don't like the idea that my tank restricts my my holiday choices. But to be fair, I think I kind of miss home after a couple of weeks anyway, to be fair. So kind of the same. I don't mind that. Anyway, so about 4 hours ago, we started doing the Reef Dork Fish of the Week. And now we are going to do the Reef Dork Coral of the Week. And I have a nasty feeling that Ryan might have already done this, if I'm honest. So you'll have to tell me if he has done this. But the Reef Dork Coral of the Week is not a coral. It is the rock flower anemone. So these pop up from time to time in the UK. We never get a variety like this. Where's this? The Fish Room. That must be in America. The fishroom.net. No idea. Or maybe that's a forum. Anyway, we don't get varieties quite like that, or not such a big collection. But you do get loads of really nice colours. That's a good one on Reef Builders. There's a place near me that gets them fairly often called Aquatic Emporium, which is in Shepperton, east of London, West Surrey. And they always seem to have a good selection. I have 3 in my my cage tank behind me and 1 downstairs. The reason I like them is because they're pretty hardy. They can, because it's an anemone, not a coral, they are a lot more tolerant of poor water quality. And they don't, unlike a bubble tip anemone, which is a pain in the ass to keep, the reality of them, they don't tend to move around so much. They do still move around sometimes, but they don't tend to move around as much as bubble tip. And if they do, they're not going to go across stinging everything and end up in power heads and all these sorts of things. So they generally, I found that in the past I've had them settle for 2 or 3 years in the same place and then suddenly move for no apparent reason. But generally they stay put. They'll move around a little bit at first and then they'll stay put. The downside is that sometimes I had one that moved to the far corner of my tank, right where I couldn't see it, basically. And that is now in this tank here, actually. Can you see it? Probably not. It's right on the sound bed. It's massive. And when I closed that tank down, I lifted that anemone up and it dropped out a little baby, which is cool. But yeah, really cool. I was going to say they're cheap. They're not really that cheap. You can get one for sort of 40, 50 quid, I reckon. But the nicer colours are normally double that. But they're just cool. They're something a little bit different. They're not as much of a pain in the arse as bubble tip anemones. And they are good. I would recommend them. Je recommande. So there you go. That is the Reef Dork Coral of the Week. And you've had the Reef Dork Fish of the Week, of course. Next week, we will have the Prestige Reef one. West London, yes. That is where Aquatic Emporium is. Jonathan, Alex, what height are AI blades over your tank behind you? I think they're about 11 inches. They're about a foot off the surface. They probably look higher in behind me in the. Hang on, I haven't got anything to measure them, I'm afraid. They probably look higher than they actually are. No, I haven't got a tape measure. They're roughly a foot, maybe a little bit less off the water surface. And the Kessel I run at something like, what do I run the Kessel at? 25%, I think. Let me tell you what I run the AI blades at. Actually, I think relatively. Oh no! Do you know what? I do run them quite low. I was going to say relatively high. I can never. I can never work out. Here we go. I can never work out the intensity, schedule intensity. 100%. No, that's not right. Schedule intensity. So, well, it's a bit funny. So at the moment, for example, I have Royal Blues at 100%. Everything else, 130%. Everything else at 0%. But for the peak during the day, so the peak during the day, I have Royal Blue 60%, Blue 40%, White, Cool White 5%. So relatively low. And I get not much par in that tank. Certainly less than 200. Mostly kind of 50 to 100. That kind of level, quite low. And it's relatively even spread. Still, even with all of that, even with 3 lights spreading completely across the tank, the spread isn't completely even. But it's a small tank, so you get lots of reflections off the glass and stuff. So you're never going to get it completely even. But there you go. Yeah, that's they're about a foot off. Can you keep them with bubble tips? I have 3 rock flower anemones in that tank, and I had 3 bubble tips until they started popping off. But yeah, you absolutely can. I did find though that the bubble tip, I think they're more aggressive than the rock flower anemones, because the bubble tip that is at the top there, that started touching the rock flower anemone that was on the side of the rock, and it didn't like it. So the rock flower moved away, and it's now sat in the middle down there. So I think a bubble tip in a fight, if you want to put a bet on, go for the bubble tip, and they will win over a rock flower anemone. But yeah, you absolutely can keep them together. They just don't cross the streams, man. Lincoln Towns, sip of beer incoming. Reef Dork, in your opinion, is it possible to have too many copepods in your tank? When the light's out, it looks like an ant's nest. Yeah, probably is actually. And I think there was something I was watching recently where there was the copepods were eating. Someone was spawning corals. Maybe it was Monsoon Aquatics, and they found it. I think it was. They found that copepods were eating tiny corals. Yeah, you can have too many. To be fair, if you've got a ton of copepods, just get a wrasse. Wrasses are awesome. Or if should I recommend a scooter blenny? Maybe I shouldn't, because they don't do that well. They can be a finicky one to keep. But anything that would eat copepods. My scarlet hawkfish eats them for fun. Wrasses will do as well, of course. So yeah. So if you do think you've got too many, then you can chuck in. There are loads of fish that will eat them. But yeah, you probably can get too many. I don't know when. I've never had too many, but then I keep fish that eat them. But you probably can have too many. And I'm sure if there are plague numbers, they will eat things that you wouldn't want them to eat. But I don't know. There must be quite a high threshold for too many copepods. I think you'd have to have an awful lot. How are the fish getting on now? Your fallow period is finished. It looks insane. Maybe you got too many. They're doing well. So excuse me. So the cade ended up being fallow for something like 4 months. A long time, maybe even longer in the end. Not deliberately, but just because of timings. And I'm just going to order a beer, actually. Hang on a second. I'm not going to mute you. Please, may I have a beer, darling wife? There we go. So the cade was fallow for ages, and it's doing fine. It actually looked really good during the fallow period. I didn't get any algae that tank. This is a great thing about it running on autopilot, is it just does really well. It doesn't seem to mind to have any problems. So that was absolutely fine. The main tank, the Red Sea tank, I still got quite a lot of algae. It's a lot less than it was at its peak. There was a video I did not long ago, a month ago maybe, at the end of the fallow period, or maybe just at the start when I just put fish in, and you could see there is, when I turn the lights up white, you can see there was not loads of algae, but there was a lot more than I would like. That's now subsided massively. The ulva is almost completely gone, but there's still a few clumps of green hair algae, and there's some on the back glass. It just doesn't look as nice as I like it to look. I like it to be completely without. So, but it's getting on well. I had a torch coral. I hate torch corals. This is why I have a love-hate relationship with torch corals. Some of them are fantastic, and the one I had was a Holy Grail torch. It was gorgeous. It had been in a mate's tank for years and was doing really well. He had lost a head, I think, because of a salinity spike. But apart from that, it was settled and nice and healthy. And in comes the beer. Merci bien. So apart from that, it was doing really well. It was nice and healthy, and it was really healthy when I had it. It's been on the thumbnail of a couple of videos, I'm sure, of a couple of my videos, and it just died recently. Just started withering, and then just died. I put it in the sump. I've got a little in-tank sump set up, like a frag tank section set up, but it just withered and died pretty quickly. So I hate torches at times. It's a shame, but yeah, beer service is good tonight. I agree, Charles. So it's generally doing okay. I lost that torch, which was a real shame. It was quite expensive, and it was just really nice. But apart from that, I can't think of any. I've had one or two issues with corals, but literally one or two, and most things are doing really well. The fish are generally okay. I need a lot more fish in there. It looks empty. And also I find all the fish hang out on the right-hand side of the tank almost always. And it annoys me. It's like, go over to the other side, even up my aesthetic. So I need more fish in there, to be fair. And it just looks, they're probably, I think I've got 7 fish in that tank, and it's a 6-foot tank. That's not a lot of fish in a 6-foot tank. So so it needs more fish, but it's doing well, actually. It's doing better. And I don't think I've got any real issues. I think everything is generally pretty good. My wrasse has started turning up the sand like an absolute bastard. So he's burying corals, but I've moved most of the corals away from the area he likes to dig up. But yeah, it's all good. Does anyone know what happened to Reef Dreams? Asks Mike Brewer. I'm assuming you mean Reef Dreams in Winchester. So that closed down. Excuse me. That closed down 3 years ago. I think it was just after COVID hit. Maybe it was a year or so after COVID, to be fair. That closed down a while ago. So the owner moved from Winchester to Southampton, and they shut down, I don't know, 6 months to a year after moving. It just didn't really take off, I don't think. The location wasn't very good in Southampton. The Winchester location was spot on. I didn't like the location personally in Southampton. It was a bit in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, it was a shame because when it was in Winchester, that place was cracking. It was fantastic. It was up there with the best of them in the country, but it's been gone for a while now and it's not coming back. So yeah, shame. I did a tank tour of the Reef Dreams Old Peninsula tank. That was really nice, actually. I had a chat with Steve. Nice guy. Next to no stock when it was in Totten. Yeah, because it was when they first moved over as well. I moved over when it'd been set up for like a week, and it just looked half empty because he was just moving in. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. But hey, Emmanuel W, we've done that at the start of the stream. So wind back and you will see my thoughts. But in short, I think the Hydra Edge looks really good. Really, 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 really good, in fact. It's just the bigger one looks a bit expensive. Make it cheaper, please. Or give us more LEDs. So yeah, that is Reef Dreams. What else did I have to tell you? I think that is all the stuff on my list of stuff I had to tell you. And without Prestige Reef to whittle on about nonsense, philosophical nonsense, we might be wrapping up early. I am going to keep going for a little bit longer, though, because we can have a chat. So ask me any questions you've got, and we'll keep chatting. Surrey Reefer says, my Tunsy for the first time ever got stuck on. Oh, really? And the sensor dumped a whole load of RO. Wow. While at work. Luckily saved before it overflowed. That's pretty unlucky. I've never had that. I've never had an auto top off get stuck on. They always get turned off. They always get stuck off, which is annoying. But yeah, that's bad. So this is the problem. Actually, it's not too bad now. My auto top off, my freshwater reservoir, when I carried the same one over from my last tank, my Peninsula 500, and I had it custom made, and it's about 80 litres. It holds 80 litres, which is 20 gallons, which on the last tank was enough for a week and a half, 2 weeks almost. On the new tank, it's enough for about a week, just over a week. But the downside, that's great because it means you don't have to top up very often. Although in practice, I ended up topping every week. But the downside is if your return pump, if your auto top off gets stuck on, then you're in trouble because you got 20 gallons of fresh water. And if you go on Hamza's Reef, HAMZA, Hamza's Reef calculator online, there's a calculator you can work out what that will do to your water, to be fair, your salinity. Let's work that out, actually. So that was roughly, water volume was 400 litres, I think, on that tank. Is that 400 litres? I think it was roughly there. So I'm going to do this again. This is the Hamza's Reef calculator. It's brilliant. It's a resulting salinity calculator. And if your salinity is ever off for whatever reason, or if you're setting up a new tank and you want to work out how much how to adjust your salinity, basically, this is fantastic. It gives you a really good starting point. So you give it some various information. I'm going to tell it that my tank was 400 litres and that the salinity was 35 parts per thousand. You can set that to gallons and all that sort of stuff as well. And you can set it to specific gravity or whatever. Water added. Change type. So you can do water evaporated, water replaced, water added, then evaporated. So that will cover all scenarios. And we're talking about adding a load of fresh water from your auto top-off reservoir. So volume added, 80 litres. I know it was 80 litres. 80 litres. Salinity of water added, 0 parts per thousand. Calculate. Ooh, so on a worst case scenario, if I had just filled up my freshwater reservoir, then it dumped the whole lot in, my salinity would have reduced from 35 parts per thousand to 29 parts per thousand. And I can tell you right now, that would kill everything coral-wise in the tank pretty much straight away. The fish would potentially survive, but with all that much pollution, a lot of fish might die as well. So, yeah, there you go. That's a problem. It would be very unlikely that it would get stuck on as soon as you've filled it up. But nonetheless, if you're ever wondering how big should I size my my auto topper of my freshwater reservoir, and you're worried about what might happen if things go wrong, you can go and check that out, and you can see what a worst case scenario is. That worst case scenario is a disaster, basically. So let's see what would it be if it was 40 litres, so half the size, 32 parts per thousand, down from 35. You'd still do well to keep many corals from that much of a swing in the space of half an hour or whatever. So yeah, I think maybe it's not worth thinking about. One dropped to 33.2, luckily. Okay. I presume everything was okay. Any plans to have more guests on the show? Yes. So Parker's Reef, I asked a couple of months ago, and he's up for it. And I said, leave it with me, I'll get back to you. And I just haven't got around to it. So sorry, Sam, if you're watching. I will have him on. Other guests, no real plans. I like the chemistry with Prestige. It's good. It works that well. If there's a really good guest, then great. We'll book someone in. But it's not. Who was it? Reef Bum, who stopped doing them recently. He was brilliant at guests. Really, really good at guests. And Beyond the Reef is the Beyond the Reef podcast as well. Adam from Frag Garage, he does guests really well as well, and he gets people on who really know their stuff with corals, so that's a bit more educational. But maybe we'll definitely get Sam on at some point. I'll message him, but I'm bad at that. Where's Ryan tonight? He's looking after an unwell relative. Gonport says, what do you think about the Red Sea Max Nano XXL G2? I like it, actually. I really like it. They're expensive. How much are they? Red Sea Max Nano G2 XXL. First things first, Nano XXL. I mean, I don't know who came up with that name, but it's a bit of an oxymoron, don't you think? But it's a 3-foot tank. It's not a nano tank. How many litres is it hold? 180, something like that. 200 litres system volume. So it'll be less than that, to be fair, but that's not a nano tank. First thing to say, it's not a nano tank. But I think it looks really nice, to be fair. I think it looks really nice. The dimensions front to back, I would like it to be a bit wider. I really like front to back it is kind of a nano tank. It's an all-in-one, really. So with an all-in-one tank like that, you're always going to be shallow-ish front to back. It just limits you on the scape. You might end up with a relatively steep scape, although this is looking all right. And if I did upgrade the Cade, that is one tank I would think about getting. I think they look really nice. Yeah, I think they're nice. And because it's an all-in-one tank, you have a cabinet underneath with loads of space for equipment, which is really handy. So there's a bit of space in the Cade, and there is enough space because that has a built-in auto top-up freshwater reservoir, which is behind the tank. So I don't need extra space there. But the Cade makes particularly good use of the space in the cabinet, of the dry space. They do really well with that. Most tanks don't. And so having an empty cabinet with no sump in there underneath that tank would be really helpful. The only thing that I don't like about the Red Sea Max Nano G2 XXL, long name, really is that it's quite big, 200 litres. So let's say it's more like 170 because it's the figure that manufacturers state is never the correct amount after displacement and all that sort of stuff. So let's say it's 170 litres. It's quite a lot of water. If you can do a 10% water change, 17 litres, that's not too bad, I suppose. But I like the fact that I can do on my 100 litre tank, I can do a 25 litre water change, which is 25%. And to do a 25% water change on that, you've got a big old bucket. So yeah, that's the only thing. But no, it's nice. It's nice. The only thing, well, actually, no, that's not the only thing. The price. It's very expensive. But I think they look really nice. If you can afford it, they look good. They do come with the Red Sea Reef-led 50s, which I've never had. They are the ones, I think they don't have such a broad spectrum. which is saying something because the normal ones aren't that wide spectrum. But they'll be fine. It's a neat little tank. Yeah. If you can put up with the money, then they're all right. Because they've not been out long, there aren't many knocking around on eBay, I'm guessing. So, if you're using an ATO and a control, you can set up a failsafe if your ATO sticks on. That's really good. An additional sensor or float switch to turn off the outlet. Yeah. That's pretty handy, to be fair. But yeah, I just don't like your Chrome controllers. George D. G-Tech says, can you set your... I'm just going to turn my... the answer is yes, by the way. I'm going to have a sip of beer. Can you set your lights too high? Yes, you absolutely can. I have mine set to UV 90%, violet 90%, royal blue 120, blue 120, green 6, DR, which is presumably red, 9, CW, which is presumably cool white, 80%. My hammer is upset, but everything looks good on an AI Hydra 64 HD. What size is your tank? If it's anything like, if it's like a 2-foot cube, that is almost certainly far too high for your for anything other than Aquapora, basically the really high light demand corals. So on that tank, for example, what was it? You've got AI Hydra 64. Oh, that's a big light as well. Yeah, okay. So I have a Kessel A500X, which is lower power than an AI Hydra 64, and I've got that set at 25% overall, way lower. So I would dial that way back. The bet that you can always have too much light, far too much light, very easily, and I think you do have too much light. It's hard to tell without knowing what size it is. Fluval M90, always. Is that a 90 litre Fluval M90 M90 marine tank? Let's have a look. I think that is a 90. Yeah, I think it's 90 centimeters long, right? So 135 liters. Yeah, okay. That's way too high. Way too high. Turn that right down. The only way to really know is to do a PAR test. Have I got my PAR meter notes downstairs? Is to do a PAR test. But I can tell you without doing a PAR test, your lights are too strong. It's always better to have your lights as low as you possibly can, really, because corals will be totally fine with too little light. But if you give them too much light, they don't like it one little bit. So yeah, dial that way back. I would. It's a funny shaped tank for that light, to be fair, because it's quite wide tank. But I would have that, assuming your light is, I don't know, 10 inches off the water surface. I would probably bump it up as high as you can do, maybe a foot off the water surface, and I would, as a rough guide, maybe 30% intensity overall. So nowhere near the levels you've got, way less. So thanks for asking, well done for asking, but yeah, your lights are too strong. Lee Rose, my utter chaos have started shrinking slowly and disappearing. Any idea? Not change anything in the tank. I wonder if my fox face is snacking on them. Could be. I mean, what are your water parameters? This is the trouble, really. So this isn't the YouTube, especially comments section as well, isn't a brilliant place for discussing what's wrong with your tank, because really you want to get on a forum so you can post photos and you can have a back and forth discussion. But it'll almost certainly be your water parameters. The best thing to do, actually, you know what? The best thing to do is, I've done it. I'm going to, at some point, I will condense this into 3 or 4 small, like 5-10 minute videos. But Ryan and I did a live stream about a month or so ago, where we went through basically and diagnosed what's wrong with your tank. Where was it? Top 5 tank alternatives, fastest growing corals, why corals die. There it is. 3,600 views. That is a criminally underwatched video. So it's called Coral Recovery Checklist. It's 2 hours long, so it's a long old video. But that, honestly, that video is everything. You will be able to diagnose what is wrong with 99% of problems with corals by watching that video, because it's actually keeping corals is very simple. It's we're the ones who overcomplicate it. So watch that video. It's 2 hours long, but I promise you'll be able to work it out based on that. Alex, says Dan's Reef, what do you think of the biggest fish you will get in your Red Sea 6 foot? Yeah, I don't generally like big fish. I was thinking of a what's it called, a Scarus koi parrotfish today, which I keep coming back to. Scarus koi, and I will show you what. When I type that in, it suggests status quo. The quo. which is one of these guys. They're so cool. That's a doctored photo, surely. This is more like what they look like, and even that's a good photo. Probably a Scarus koi would be the bigger one, and they can, in fact, you can see how big they get. Look at the size of that bad boy. They can get marine collectors. Is it? No, it's not marine collectors. That's not the one I was thinking of. Anyway, they can get quite big. So I don't want big fish in the tank. I don't want big fish in the tank. I think 6 foot is not a massive tank. So having a big old like 8-inch acanthophorus tang or whatever, I don't like it. I like smaller fish. I think just having a smaller fish in a bigger tank is better. Actually, that's a point. So, hang on. Wind back. The choice of tank manufacturers in the UK is pretty poor. Do you know what? I was actually looking recently. I think we've got quite a broad option, a broad list of tanks in the UK now. Certainly, I don't know, 10 years ago, there weren't many at all. But now, this is Charterhouse Aquatics, which is where I get most of my dry goods, I think, if I'm going online. You've got Aqua One, Aqua EL, I'm not going to count that. Aqua Forest, they're quite expensive. Clear Seal, they're budget end. DD are really nice. Fluval are generally a bit smaller. What else have we got? Innovative Marine, you don't really get them in. Neptunian Cube, Nios, Red Sea, TMC, and Waterbox. I don't know what's happening with Waterbox at the moment in the UK, but I think the choice is actually pretty wide. I think there are loads. But the best ones are generally Waterbox and Red Sea were kind of the two biggest ones. It's just you don't really get Waterbox so much anymore. But yeah, I think we get quite a few. Just set up a new Neptunian Cube, which is another tank. So actually, I do. So I said I'd look at a Red Sea 170 for this. If I did upgrade the cage, which I don't want to, but I'd also look at a Neptunian Cube because they have that ultra thin weir box, so you get loads of aquascaping space, more aquascaping space, which is really good. I like that. You've just set up the M Pro 120. I only have 2 Red Sea Reef Led 90s. Do you think that will be enough? Yes, I do. The M Pro 120, I presume, is either 4 foot or 120 gallons. But yeah, absolutely, that's a perfect choice for lighting. So the thing is idiots like me spend £1,000 on light for a tiny little tank like this, and then people will watch it and say, "Oh, I need more light," but that's way overkill, and I have them really low. Two Red Sea Reef Led 90s or AI Hydra 16s, 32s, or 2 Radion XR 15s, perfect for that tank. You're done. You don't need any more. That's absolutely spot on, and it means you don't have to spend more money, which is great. So yeah, that's the perfect. That's all you need. First time watcher. Well done. Cheers, George. What else have we got? Parrotfish are cool. They are cool. Reef Ed says, everybody's new favourite channel. Says, I also want to know what you might add to the 6 foot. It seems you are lightly stocked and have lots of options. Yeah. I'm still torn on the idea of quarantine. I don't know where I fall on quarantine. I just hate it. I hate quarantine, but I don't want to not quarantine because of the issues I've had. So I don't know. We'll see. I might go back to quarantine. I might go back to just plop and drop. Who knows? I want some kind of aptasia fish. I want a tang. So probably an Australian stripey, maybe a copper-banded butterfly. But apart from that, I've not really decided yet. I did draw up a shortlist, but there's not many fish on that shortlist. So I need to get back into it. But because I've not been able to do anything for 4 months with regard to fish, because I've had the tank being fallow, I've not really been looking. So when I go into my local fish shop, I don't really properly look, and that's when I get the ideas. But I do like the idea of a Scarus koi, and my missus likes them because they got little smiley beaky faces. So maybe one of those guys. We'll see. I don't know. I want more though. I need loads more fish in that tank. But I bought 8 fish recently. 8 fish I did. 4 of them were for the cade. So that's now fully stocked. But that cost me a fortune. Fish are so expensive. They're so expensive. And I bought that Japanese angel recently as well, which is really expensive. So I've been bled dry. I have no money left. So that's another issue. But yeah, there'll be loads of options, and by the summer it should be filled up, but it's way understocked at the moment. Way understocked. I want probably 20 fish in there, something like that. 20 fish is probably a reasonable number. We'll see. I have. Oh yeah, you have a Scarish Koi in the main display tank. He's like a puppy at the glass to say hello. Andy, every live stream he does. Say hello to Andy. Every live stream he does. Yeah. Does he eat your corals? I would be interested to know. The trouble is, they also, some of them, you often get them, they look a bit boring when you get them in the shop. Every now and then you'll get a really nice coloured one, and you'll get, as in the really brightly coloured. But a lot of the time they're a little bit drab and they're quite big. I like it when you get a small one that's really brightly coloured. And even then, to be fair, they're not a really brightly, they're a cool fish and they look really good under white lights, but they're not, I want them, the way they look in my mind is amazing, and the reality of them is a little bit more underwhelming, but I do like them. Waterbox officially pulled the plug in the UK. Yeah, I don't really know what happened with them. They made good tanks. I really like the frag tank. Waterbox frag series, which were 16 inches tall, they were fantastic. They look so good. I very, very nearly got a when I set up the Red Sea tank, I emailed Waterbox actually and asked if they'd be up for providing me with a tank, and I was going to go down the custom route. It didn't work out in the end, but I was also thinking about the 6-foot Waterbox frag, the 180.6, I think it was called, something like that, 270.6, no, 180.6, something like that. That would have looked amazing. The shallow tanks are so good. So it's a shame it didn't work out. I don't know why they couldn't make it work out for whatever reason, but it is a shame. And the new Infinia range looks really nice. And Ryan's LX, which is 2.5 feet front to back, is really nice too. So yeah, it's a real shame they did pull out, but okay, never mind. It didn't ever seem to quite take off for them for whatever reason. Being that someone's been wiped out by Velvet 3 times, please, QT. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. But yeah, I know. No, you're right. Why are you not using personal quarantine service now? I don't. Oh yeah, what, Ryan? Yeah. No, I don't want to be a burden as well. I do want to do at some point. I want to do a video on my version of quarantine, because I do. There's the Humblefish is the best resource for quarantine on the internet. But if you go on Humblefish forum, you're likely to get told to do sort of 10 or 12 things, the absolute 100% best way to do things. Whereas I would like to make a video that talks a little bit about a more realistic approach for more people. Not saying it's better at all. It's not better, it's worse. But I'd like to do that at some point, but I don't know. Until I've nailed that, I don't think I'll do it. I might end up doing one at some point, but I don't know. I got a file fishing out on my Aptasia, didn't touch my Zoas. Give him time. Aptasia eating file fish are really cool. I love them. I don't think they're boring. They're brown. A lot of people don't like the way they look, but I think they're really cool, and they're characters as well. But I've had two, and they ate different kind. One ate Monties, and the other one ate Duncans and Acans. But mullered my Acans, bastard. With QT, can't you just do observation for 2 weeks or so rather than treat copper right away? Which is what I might end up doing, to be fair, because if I'd have done that with the Royal Grammar, I wouldn't have had the problem, because the Royal Grammar would have developed signs of disease and died. So maybe. Have you considered tank transfer method? I have, and I've said a couple of times that I don't want to have to set up two tanks, two lots of everything, and you have to have them in separate rooms. I do kind of have the space, but this is not a big house, and it would be very messy to do that. And anytime I say that, people are like, oh yeah, but you could just do it in 2 buckets. You don't need loads of equipment. It doesn't have to be expensive. But I just don't like it. I just don't like the sound of it. Also sounds like quite a lot of work, and I am time poor. So no, I don't think that's for me, to be honest. And when you look into it, they then talk about a hybrid tank transfer method as well, which is even more complicated. One of the issues with quarantine in the UK, at least anyway, is the medication you can get hold of. So I used API General Cure this time around for the clownfish to make sure I didn't get Brook, or well, hopefully to treat Brook, and that also treats flukes. But you can't actually get that in the UK. I don't know. I must have got it from, I think I got it from a website called Frugo or something, and it must have been imported from abroad, but you can't get it. And there are certain medications that you probably shouldn't be buying in the UK. Copper Power is fine, that's no problem, that's widely available, but the good stuff that you really want, I would be reluctant to make a video saying, hey, why don't you go and buy metronidazole, Metroplex, when you're not supposed to have it in the UK. So Yeah, that's another issue with quarantine in the UK. I don't have the stomach for it either. I hate it when you're watching your fish, like when I've had fish die in quarantine, and this time around the hawkfish started heavy breathing, and I was like, oh god, what do I do? I don't like it. I just don't like it. But yeah, I know. Shreddy Player 1, quality pun. Nearly gave up the hobby before Christmas because of Aptasia. Got a filefish and he cleared the tank. Wicked, I like it. Just a shout out to say thanks for the podcast. Cheers, Kieran, appreciate it. This will make a rubbish podcast because it's not a conversation, but I will upload it anyway. Gonna cough. It seems you guys will change. Do you know what happened to the Ocean Project? It became Vision Aquatics. So Sean, who was at the Ocean Project, who I knew he was at Reef Dreams before that. Actually, he's been on the live stream. He did the Sean Russell Acroman. He's cool. So you can go back and watch 2 hours of him talking about acros. He used to run the Ocean Project. And then he left the Ocean Project. He went off and he set up his own venture called Successful Reef Aquariums. You can find him on Facebook, Successful Reef Aquariums. He does maintenance, tank maintenance, various things, to be honest. He does loads. And he's brilliant. So he left. And after that, I went back. I think I went back once or twice. The main reason I used to go was because of Sean, because he was great. And so when he left, it's a long way for me. So it was a good ride to be fair on the bike. But when he left, I didn't really have so much of a reason to go because I just like Sean. He's a nice guy. So it's still there. It's now called Vision Aquatics. It's just not Sean. And Sean's brilliant at reef keeping. So, but it's still there. It's still there, and it's called Vision Aquatics. And they were at Aqua Edge last year. So. All right, I'm going to wrap things up because we're getting on to a good time, and this means I can still do an upload on the podcast without staying up till midnight. So, thank you all for bearing with me without Prestige. He should be back next week, but I'll let you know how we go with that, and catch you later. Cheers, guys.